So, hi everyone, thanks for inviting me. I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of an insight into my life. So, here's a few things about me. I'm a family girl. My flatmates call me Linda. I love photography, and I'm a final year geography student, who, by the way, handed in her dissertation this week. Being a geographer means that I love walking in the countryside, but being a student means that a walk has to end at the pub. As you can see, I'm a typical 21-year-old. So today I wanted to talk to you about my experience of living with type 1 diabetes as a young person, and I hope that it gives you a little bit of an insight into my life living through my teenage years with type 1 diabetes and the roller coaster of my highs and lows, literally. So I've decided to start my speech at the beginning of my journey. The first symptoms of my type 1 diabetes started in year 7 around the summer term, when the school took us down to London to see the stage production of Oliver. All I can remember on this journey is being incredibly thirsty. Within a few hours of my journey, I drank 3 bottles of water. So, as you can imagine, after drinking all this water, I started to need the toilet. But just putting it down to the fact that it was a novelty to be allowed flavoured water, I tried not to drink any on the way home. However, on the way back, after falling asleep, I woke up to find my mouth incredibly dry again. So I ended up drinking another bottle of water. It's just the hot weather making me drink a lot, I thought to myself. Later in the term, I was becoming incredibly tired, and by the end of the term, I was exhausted. I was still drinking lots, and by the end of the year exams, I started to annoy 1 or 2 of my teachers by constantly asking to go to the toilet and fill up my water bottle. I remember standing outside my form room and fiddling with my skirt, and it nearly fell into the floor. That night, my mum and dad had to go and get me a new skirt from the school shop. They just thought it was a growth spurt, and I didn't really think anything of it. So the summer holidays rolled around, and we headed to our friend's villa in Spain. This is where I became ill really quickly. I was eating constantly. I developed a love for ham toasties, and I was constantly going to the toilet. Every night, I would get up around 5 times to go to the loo, and every morning, I'd wake up and found that I'd drunk around 4 litres of water. It's hard to hide how much you're drinking when the water's in bottles abroad. Every night when I'd go to bed, I'd be extremely tired, but every morning, I wouldn't feel any more refreshed. But everyone's sleepy and lazy on holiday. That's what I put my tiredness down to. My dad and my uncle tried to throw me in the pool. Don't snap her, she's like a twig, they joked. Unknowingly, of course. So when we arrived home, my mum took me to a doctor's. I tried to persuade her not to go, but it was no use. Basically, as you all know, they want you to wee in a bottle. And as a 12-year-old girl, I refused. So we took the bottle home, and we were told to bring it back the next morning. Finally, after sleeping on the idea, I reluctantly did. The doctors then ran some tests and told us that the results would be there later that day. But an hour later, there was a phone call. It was Dr. Brophy, my godparent and GP. He told my mum and dad that we urgently needed to go to hospital because I had extremely high blood sugar and ketone readings. We rushed all the way to hospital and had some more tests. They weighed me and took blood samples. My mum and dad were both really nervous, but I didn't really understand why. They told me that I was type 1 diabetic and that my blood sugars were 38, explaining to me that the non-diabetic's blood sugar level is between 4 and 7. I weighed around 4.3 stone, and my condition at the time was classed as severe. They told us that we were very lucky because if we hadn't gone to the doctors on that day, I would have been in a coma. The 5th of August 2009, a date that's engraved in my head, the date I was diagnosed. I remember sitting in the hospital room with the nurses, and my mum and dad asked what I would like. Instant horror from my dad's face when he found out being diagnosed was going to cost him an iPhone. Well, if you can't ask for something expensive when diagnosed with an incurable condition, when can you? So September rolled around, and with all my new diabetic supplies, I headed off to my first day of year 8. I was lucky enough for my mum to work at the school, so she let the staff know that I had type 1. However, I was absolutely petrified of telling my friends. Our first lesson was biology, and I started to feel a bit weird. I think the stress had got to me. From what I remember, I'd only felt this feeling once before. I checked my blood sugars, and they were low. I remember being really embarrassed having to tell my teacher that I was low, but she was lovely, asking me if I needed to leave the classroom to sort it out. Wanting to leave the classroom, but remembering being told by my diabetes team not to, I discreetly ate 2 plain digestive biscuits to bring me back up, but my eyes were welled up with tears. Newly diagnosed, I didn't know how everyone would react, and if everyone would think being diagnosed was actually my fault. So I wrote it on my wrist, I have type 1 diabetes, and that took so much of my courage. After my diagnosis, I took type 1 diabetes in my stride. I learned to carb count, inject, test my blood sugars, and everything else that comes along with it. However, as time went on, I felt isolated, being the only type 1 I knew. I felt like the only type 1 in Doncaster. It's amazing having a good support system of family and friends, but unless you live with diabetes, you can never fully understand what it's like to live with it. The shaky feeling when you're low, the need to consume the entire kitchen during a hypo, or just someone to understand your irrational diabetes clinic fear. So I decided to look at clinical trials to see if I could participate in one to cure my diabetes. Oh, how naive my 13-year-old self was. I stumbled across Diabetes UK and JDRF and signed up for Type 1 Diabetes Discovery Days, where young people like myself had signed up to become youth ambassadors. This was a stranger thing for me because I'd never met anybody with Type 1 diabetes before. Little did I know that the first person that I ever met with Type 1 diabetes would end up being my roommate on a Diabetes UK caravan camp a few years later. It was here I learnt to speak about my diabetes. Looking for cures was the dream, but carrying on managing and accepting my diabetes was the reality. Type 1 diabetes has challenged me when I've wanted to complete some of my life goals. When I was little, walking up the Old Man of Coniston with my parents, I exclaimed that I was a mountaineer. And since then, I've always grown up with a love for walking with my family, as many childhood holidays were in the Lake District and the Peak District. So for as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to complete my Duke of Edinburgh, and this did not change when I was diagnosed with type 1. Throughout my time in high school, I completed my silver DAV. I had a few lows. Walking with 12 kilograms on my back for 12 miles a day, I was bound to. However, same as everyone else, I completed it. However, gold DAV. Day 3 into our 4-day practice walk, and I was exhausted. I wanted to be independent, so I carried small cans of Sprite in my rucksack for when I went low. Dextrose tablets and any other hypo treatment that wasn't a liquid didn't bring my blood sugars up quick enough. I put on a temporary basal rate to lower the amount of insulin going into my background levels. I didn't inject for my meals, and I ate carbohydrate snacks. I was doing everything that I had been taught to do. After turning my insulin off, though, I was still having around 6 hypos a day. My rucksack weighed 15 kilograms, and we were walking 16 to 17 miles a day up steep terrain, and having low blood sugars for all this time completely drained me. The last day, I told my DAV leader, I couldn't have another day of low blood sugars like the previous days. So we emptied my rucksack, and without carrying all the extra weight, and having no insulin going in, we managed to keep my blood sugars in range. My teachers were fab, but you could tell it worried them, and it worried me. After saying that diabetes would never get in my way, and never letting it get in my way, this time it had. I didn't feel as though I could celebrate when I got to the end of my practice walk, because I didn't fully carry all of my kit. In reality, I was too hard on myself, but in a way, I'm glad that I was. But I wasn't going to give up on DAV now. You only have to tell me I can't do something to make me do it. So I went back to my diabetes team, and we spoke about my levels and what we could do. We decided to put my pump on a very low basal again, but this time my team lent me a continuous glucose monitor. This allowed me to carry on with my DAV and my team to see how my blood sugars reacted to the walks. The digital safety of having a CGM when I realised that I couldn't work out what my body was doing was fantastic, and only then did I realise that I'd been walking around in the dark. I carried my rucksack full with my equipment, but this time my camelback, that was filled with water in the last expedition, was now filled with isotopic sports drinks. Every day I'd fill my camel bag up from the leader's van, allowing me to sip on the drink throughout the day to keep my blood sugar level. It just shows that because something is difficult, you should never give up. There's always a way to work around it. Throughout my A-levels, I found my online life so important. I went through diabetes burnout, where testing, injecting, carb counting, and the emotional side of diabetes became too much alongside my exams. My HbA1c was high. Everything I tried to do to control my blood sugars was being counteracted by anxiety and exam stress. I felt like I was failing my condition that I didn't ask for, and at this period of time, I didn't want. This piece of artwork on the screen was created for a project called A Map of My Journey with Type 1 Diabetes, where I tried to show the contrasting hemispheres of emotions with type 1, and it aims to show that living with an invisible disease is just that, and the emotions and pressures that we create for ourselves are also invisible to everybody else. My art project turned into a reflective and therapeutic project, allowing me to express my feelings and emotions through drawing and painting, two of my favourite things, and in turn, it earned me full marks from the top A-level examiner in the UK, every cloud and all that. However, during this time, my diabetes team realised that I was struggling, and along with seeing them more regularly, I also saw the paediatric diabetes psychologist, a service so vital when managing a chronic condition, and that's often overlooked, especially in adult services. However, this service that is widely needed, as being your own doctor, diabetes nurse, dietitian, and trying to run your life can sometimes be a little overwhelming. Normal life is stressful enough without acting as your pancreas. As well as this close bond with my team, I found the GB Doc on Twitter, and it was one of the best things I could have done. Hashtag by hashtag, Twitter opened up a new world to me, and I've now realised that unless we talk about sensitive subjects, we won't realise that we are never alone. If there's one thing I want you to take away from my talk today, I want it to be this. It's okay to be a glow stick. Sometimes you have to break before you shine. A rough patch in managing your diabetes or a tough day of blood sugars doesn't mean there aren't better days ahead. When managing your diabetes gets hard, try these 4 things. Number 1, just talk to somebody. Don't keep how you're feeling to yourself. Number 2, set small targets of 1 extra blood test or a correction a day and increase this every week. Even the smallest steps are the steps in the right direction. Number 3, have a big old fat cry, because our pancreases are part dead and some of us are part robot, but it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with having emotions. And finally, pick yourself up and start again tomorrow. Never give in and never give up. You are strong enough. For me, finding the diabetes online community on Twitter was like a big online family, with lots of laughs from people who truly understand. The GB Doc is an invaluable community to all of us, where you can talk about anything and everything. To me, the GB Doc is like a pack of dominoes. Like dominoes, we are all different, yet we are all similar. Everyone on this slide has type 1 diabetes. We use different regimes, different technology, no technology. Some people eat jelly babies, and some people drink Lucozade to treat hypos, but at the end of the day, we're all living with the same condition. Through the online community, and by coming here today, we are all speaking up and talking about diabetes in some way or another. Our conversation allows us not to feel alone. The conversations about burnout, bad blood sugar reading, or how frustrated we sometimes feel with the condition is breaking down barriers. We are creating a domino effect by having conversations about diabetes, discussing topics people are scared to mention. It only takes one person to start a conversation, and like dominoes, it encourages other people to speak out, reminding us that we are never the only person to deal with any aspect of diabetes alone. So today, I'm going to be the first domino in the sequence and say that I don't always have perfect blood sugars, and sometimes I do overtreat my hypos. And actually, that's okay, because I'm doing my best. And by starting this domino effect, I hope you'll join me, and I hope you'll feel inspired to be the next domino. You'll realise that you're not the only one to be dealing with something that you are dealing with. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take a selfie and start this thread, and I'd like you all to tweet something that you would not normally talk about with your diabetes and start an open and honest conversation. So, bear with me. Oh, this is when technology doesn't work. Okay, I hope you're all smiling. Smile. Brilliant. So, I will now tweet that, and I hope that you will all start the conversation. Okay, done. Since joining the Twitter community, I've never felt alone with my diabetes again. I began to blog about my experiences, and seeing that other people had felt the same way and had had the same experiences was invaluable to me. Now talking to type 1s from across the world and making some of the best friends I could have ever asked for from all ages and walks of life. Blogging more frequently, I started to talk about topics in the blog that you have to live through and experience. They weren't topics that could be solely told by nurses and consultants, real-life diabetes. I spoke about going to uni, travelling and interrailing around Europe, the highs and the lows of living with type 1. I started to blog about issues and events in my life that I didn't know about, so now I had the opportunity to experience it. I wanted to be able to show others that it was possible, and my tips and tricks for getting around the problems type 1 may cause. I can see that you're already tweeting it, thank you. One of the most popular posts I've done is about interrailing, where I travelled after A-levels for a month around Europe with my 2 best friends, something many teenagers do, and I hope that I provided many tips and tricks for people with type 1 who want to do it, such as splitting medication up, what emergency snacks to take, and I hope I've provided some funny type 1 stories, such as getting lost in the middle of Switzerland and people using diabetes as a chat-up line. There were some very interesting ones. But yes, diabetes was sometimes inconvenient, but isn't it just a pain in everyday life anyway? Travelling with my 2 best friends was the best decision I could have made, and they were totally supportive of my diabetes, even splitting my medication so we could all carry it evenly in case something was to happen to one of the bags. My confidence blossomed, and I had the time of my life. Diabetes did not stop me in any way. I even found the place I want to get married, but I have to find someone to marry me first. Through raising awareness on Twitter, I received an exciting email. As part of the World Health Organisation Day, I met Amelia from BBC Radio 1 to talk about what it was like to live with type 1 diabetes. The article, which was on the BBC News page, was the #1 story for the day, and I ended up touring the radio stations up and down the country to chat about type 1 diabetes, alongside doing my degree. Who would have thought a blog that started as a little hobby would end up reaching so many people? Meeting other people with type 1 diabetes on the online community has got me in a lot of unexpected situations. It first started with lobbying in Parliament. Speaking to over 50 MPs about what type 1 diabetes is and why we need more funding just showed me how powerful it is to hear a story from someone actually living with the condition. I was invited into a private meeting with Ed Miliband, who at the time was the leader of the opposition, about why we needed increase in funding. I sat with him and shared my story, what it was like for me to live with type 1, and he also spoke to my parents about what it was like for them. It was such a positive experience to have someone in such a high-powered position take such a genuine interest in what you're talking about. Ed also told me that his uncle was one of the people who helped design the first ever insulin pump. Last year, I had the opportunity to meet Theresa May, who also had type 1 diabetes. It was fantastic to talk to her about the way she manages her diabetes in such a stressful and public job, and share my experience of living with the condition. She was so impressed with my passion and knowledge for the condition when I was speaking to her about type 1 that I was invited for a tour of 10 Downing Street. Whilst in Downing Street, I sat on Winston Churchill's thinking chair and danced down the stairs like Hugh Grant from Love Actually. Like, hello MTV, welcome to my crib. This experience made me reflect on how having a positive outlook with type 1 and always striving to do my best has landed me in this once-of-a-lifetime opportunity. I also found out that Theresa did a geography degree like myself. With all these similarities, you never know. I could be Prime Minister one day. Growing up with type 1 diabetes has given me a lot of challenges to overcome. However, it has also brought many incredible friends and opportunities. Living with type 1 diabetes has made me stronger, more determined, and I never let anything stop me achieving my goals. I aim to live my best life with type 1. Type 1 has to live with me. I won't be defined by it. However, as you all know, that living with a chronic condition isn't easy, and I look up to everyone in this room for inspiration to conquer things that I wouldn't have even thought possible at diagnosis. From people in this room who run marathons, to have incredible blood sugar control, to create beautiful babies, and people who have conquered 50 and 60 years with type 1 diabetes. You are all an utterly brilliant and fab bunch of people who support each other every day, and you inspire me to be the best that I can be. One of my favourite quotes from Eleanor Roosevelt is, "It's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness." And no matter how hard diabetes becomes, always try to find the positive or reach out to someone who understands and be there for one another. My aim in life is always to be as happy as this lady with a pom-pom hat who I photographed as a temple parade in Hong Kong. Now, doesn't she look like she's living her best life? So I'm going to leave you with a final quote of what the diabetes community means to me. Buddha once said that thousands of candles can be lighted from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. Happiness never decreases by being shared. Thank you for listening.
I've done the tweet.
Thank you. My phone blew up as soon as I did that, so thank you to everybody.
Absolutely amazing. What a wonderful, honest and heartfelt story, and that confusion around that time of diagnosis really resonated with me. You're just like, why am I so thirsty? Why does nothing fit? What's going on? I just think, that message of resilience and not giving up, and how Lydia has physically face those challenges, you're out in the middle of nowhere and you don't know what's happening to your body. What an incredible, inspiring story. And shall we all just decide to be glow sticks now, please? Amazing. Has anyone got any questions for Lydia? Anything at all? No, you've solved it. You've solved it all. Have you all tweeted, more importantly? If you could get on with that, that'd be great, much appreciated. But it's important, those honest and open stories and admitting your mistakes. We are allowed to make mistakes. This is such a huge thing that we're dealing with on our own. So thanks so much, Lydia. You can relax now.